afternoon, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be here with you to address a topic which, as chair of the UN Committee on World Food Security, I hold particularly close to my heart. As some of you may know, I spent the first 15 years of my life on a dairy farm, and indeed, some of you have sorted out, I still can milk cows by hand. Yes, thank you very much. I have to admit I don't do this on a daily basis anymore, but you never forget how to do it. I was among 9 other brothers and sisters, and the role, responsibility and challenges facing farmers and food producers in addressing food security and nutrition is something I keep very present in mind. Today, we live in an age of interlinked challenges, but also of endless opportunities. Overall, important progress has been made in fighting hunger and malnutrition worldwide. However, 795 million people still go to bed hungry every day, including 161 million children whose physical and intellectual development is impaired by undernutrition and nutrition deficiencies. These numbers in the 21st century remain unacceptable. We must step up our efforts to eradicate hunger and malnutrition globally. And when I say globally, I do not only mean on each corner of the planet, I mean by each and every one of us. We are all stakeholders. Farmers, producers, consumers, decision makers, researchers, industries, etc., through real willingness and ability to collaborate in a multi-stakeholder way. Today, I would like to share with you my vision of the challenges we are still facing today that hinder progress and the paradigm shift we need to tackle these challenges. Let me start by describing some of the paradoxes and difficulties that stand in the way of food security and nutrition for all. First, food is produced by farmers. Paradoxically, however, the majority of the hungry people in the world are farmers and their families. Farmers constitute a very heterogeneous category, from tiny smallholders in developing countries to high-tech farms, and from crop producers to livestock farmers, dairy producers, fisherfolk, etc. There is no one-size-fits-all recipe, and policies aiming to support food producers worldwide in contributing to global food security must tackle a complex range of factors. Food producers are entrepreneurs who aim to make a living. They invest, take risk, face increasing environmental, hygiene and safety constraints, have to cope with the impacts of climate change on yields or animal welfare. The importance of quality food products for global food security and good nutrition is stressed over and over again. So, farmers must be better supported in their role of providing the world's food and nutritional needs, starting with a decent reward by paying a good price for their work and products. Convincing the young generations to take over farms has become a challenge worldwide and will remain so, unless Farmers' livelihoods worldwide are better supported, and farmers are able to earn a decent income and are recognized for their role in producing public goods. But farmers interact also with other actors, for instance, consumers, and we are all consumers. Consumers and civil organizations play a crucial role in a growing world population of over 7.3 billion people, projected to reach more than 9 billion by 2050. Good diets are a key challenge for the future. And as we speak, an affluent middle class is quickly arising in many countries, hungry for more meat, fish and dairy. Recent figures indicate that by 2020, the world will consume 60 billion liters more milk than in 2012. Good news for the growth of the dairy sector. But at the same time, it is our common responsibility to ensure that this growth is sustainable and that indeed we are able to produce more with fewer resources and in particular with fewer greenhouse gas emissions and close to no food loss and waste. Fortunately, particularly in Western countries, the civil opinion mindsets are slowly changing and public awareness campaigns gain clout, assisted by new technologies and social media. This should encourage the dairy sector to further step up on its path to sustainability and towards a leadership position in sustainable business throughout the whole chain, economically, socially and environmentally. And listening this morning to the contributions to the presentations, I couldn't agree more. Too much and too often, sustainability is only framed in an environmental way. No, sustainability contains 3 pillars. Of course, environment, but also the social and economic pillar. So the dairy sector should embrace innovation and technology. Research is also making progress every day on how to improve the sustainability of agricultural production. But knowledge transfer should be strengthened. And learning should always be a two-way path, where food producers are also knowledge producers, a knowledge that should be shared for society and a sustainable future aimed to produce concrete results. An important link between food producers and consumers is the food industry or the agri-business. While profit remains the driver of business, the attention of many actors of the private sector is increasingly focused on realizing sustainable results through inclusive growth. Building longer-term relationships with suppliers, governments and consumers is essential, and I have witnessed how more and more big and small companies are willing to cooperate in a transparent and sustainable way in order to make a lasting difference and show leadership. However, to thrive and play a responsible role, businesses of all sizes need an enabling environment. And here, governments have to play a crucial role. An enabling environment means having predictable and evidence-based policies, programs, governance and institutions that can support farmers and food producers with public investments that facilitate private investments with a sound and stable legal framework and through the provision and development of infrastructures. But currently, the question is how many countries are really giving proper attention to the organization and improvement of their food systems. Indeed, some challenges, and food security and nutrition is one of them, are too big to be solved by governments alone. And even within single governments, on such interconnected issues, interests between ministries even diverge. But it is important to realize that dairy farmers will only be able to produce in a sustainable way if they have the expectation to sell their milk, butter, cheese, for instance, for a higher price than what it costs them to produce it. And if there is a well-functioning market to buy their products. Summarizing, all stakeholders have their own perspectives, assets, and particular challenges. And these may sometimes seem mutually exclusive. However, if we want to achieve a world where, as the Global Sustainable Development Goals state, in 2030, no one is left behind on such a topic as hunger and malnutrition, then joining efforts is clearly the only way forward. So the question is, how can we move forward? Firstly, inclusiveness. Knowledge and collective ownership are not only guiding the principles for the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals, or as we call it these days, the Agenda 2030, to be adopted 4 days from now in New York. They constitute the paradigm shift the world needs to achieve sustainability in all its 3 dimensions. Let me repeat: economic, social, and environmental, and particularly for food security and nutrition of all worldwide. A traditional African proverb says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let me underscore this. This is what guides us at the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, the CFS, the most inclusive international and intergovernmental platform for all stakeholders to work together towards food security and nutrition for all. It's a mouthful, but the International Dairy Federation is an appreciated participant in CFS, and I was proud to see the CFS amongst the priorities for the next year. We count on you, and you can count on the CFS. Just think how many dimensions of food and nutrition issues would be missing if policy dialogue just took place among states and international organizations. We need to have all relevant actors around the table to contribute to policies, to implementation, and to share responsibility for concrete solutions and concrete results, including, given their role in providing food security and nutrition, dairy producers. I congratulate IDF for their exemplary work, gathering everybody from dairy farmers, dairy processing industry, dairy suppliers, to academics and governments, food control authorities. You have made crucial contributions to food security and nutrition. IDF also made a good contribution to the 2nd International Conference on Nutrition last November in Rome to provide private sector inputs to the political Rome Declaration and to the framework for action adopted by more than 150 countries. And indeed, we can no longer afford to work in silos. Secondly, we need knowledge exchange, which is essential. The key to broadening and deepening our understanding of food insecurity and malnutrition and of its immediately and underlying causes is evidence. It requires scientific expertise at different levels and interaction with stakeholders. This is the role, for example, of the CFS high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, our HLPE, a participative and dedicated group of international experts that presently independent, solid, evidence-based report and with associated policy implications. Next year's, and co-based on effective IDF lobbying, next year's HLPE report will address sustainable agriculture, including the role of livestock for food security and nutrition. And the HLPE will prepare the ground for policy recommendations negotiated among CFS stakeholders. Thirdly, we need responsibility and ownership that must be felt at all levels. In CFS, member states take decisions, but only after substantial debate and negotiations with all stakeholders. Whether it is on responsible agricultural investments, food security and nutrition in protracted crisis, or tackling food loss and waste, everyone has a part to play in implementing decisions. Countries, of course, through policies, but also civil society, private sector, academia, international organizations, UN agencies should lead within their own programs to improve the enabling environment and hold governments to account. If all CFS participants played their role in implementing CFS recommendations, such a complex challenges as food security and nutrition would be tackled and become history within one generation. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, inclusiveness, evidence-based and ownership are the paradigms which should guide us to achieve the future we want. Only multi-stakeholder collaboration can support us in moving beyond short-term individual interests and to global solutions in agriculture and food security. This year, moving towards the Agenda 2030, thousands of stakeholders have been solicited to define our common objectives for 2015 till the year 2030. And there is a common understanding that after the endorsement of the SDGs the next week, all stakeholders will be responsible for the implementation of these goals. The dairy sector, your sector, has more than once proven to be able to take the lead in building an innovative future. Here in Vilnius, I count on the world dairy leaders, the IDF, on all and each of you, entrepreneurs and other participants, to become a champion of this approach back home and wherever you go, and to ensure that on our path to global sustainability, no one is left behind. Today, the 21st of September 2015, it's more than ever time to make hunger and malnutrition belong to history. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm from China Mengniu Dairy Company. So I'm so appreciated I can attend the IDF forum in the second time. As I remember in 2013, that is my first time joining the IDF forum. I still remember the conference theme is rediscover the milk value. So for this year, you can see the conference theme is closing the nutrition with the sustainable dairy. So from the theme, give me a lot of thinking and remind me, as a traditional dairy provider, maybe we can do more than a dairy provider. As you know, Monyo, actually we founded in 1999, and we're only 16 years old, but we grow very fast. Today, we're already to be the 11th largest dairy company in the world, and we still grow with China, because China also still become the third largest country of milk production. So in the new area, and as a traditional dairy provider, what we can do and what we can provide more value for the future, as the conference seems to remind us. So in last year, we wanted to upgrade our vision for the future. To be, how can we transform a traditional dairy provider to be the consumer focused and committed to being innovative, nutrition and healthy food company? Actually, that is very big changes. When you want to change a very traditional dairy company to be a nutrition and healthy food company, that means you need a lot of things supporting to you to do the transform. But we're very clear, because in the new area, because the consumer needs and the already upgrade, they want a diversity products. They also want more premium products, more than very traditional dairy products. So internally, we are very clear. The key was is innovation. How can you use your innovation to get your transform from the traditional dairy provider to be the new vision for you? So how can we achieve as a Chinese company? We think it's very clear. Two approaches very important. One is globalization. A second one is digitalization. I think let me give some briefing about what we can do for the globalization. As you know, Monyo is a very traditional Chinese company, grows very fast. When you want to be innovative, how can you be quickly to integrate the global resources? It's very important strategy for us in the futures. So I think we have courage, and we are very brave Chinese company, because we firstly introduced the Danone and Arla as our major shareholder to be a company, because we want to use the shareholder to help us to improve our product standard and give us more innovation technology and support in the futures here. And 2 years later, I think the shareholder working together, we're so happy. We get a lot more technology, people supporting from Danone and Arla. I think we already moved one stage in the Chinese company here. And that is not enough for us, we think. We think we still need to do more in the globalization. So 3 weeks ago, we signed an agreement with the UC Davis in California. We together commit to set up a nutrition and health institute, and very focused on how can we commercialize their UC Davis, their research result, and how can we commercialize the research result and to generate more Chinese market. That is another big achievement for us, because we think we need more integrate the innovation resources, innovation result out of China. So we still think China have a big market, and we still think a lot of things from outside China can help us to generate innovations. That is, I think so. And also we think that in the later, globalization is not enough. How can we put our resources out of China? So in November, in New Zealand, our new infant formula powder factory, we're officially running. And also welcome a lot of our industry friends can join us to celebrate the opening ceremony in November. So that is very important for our globalization. But when you put the resources, it's also not enough. Because when the Chinese company will integrate the global resources, the big barrier is people, culture, and the system. So 2 years ago, we are introduced more and more multinational company people to join Monyo, and we set up a multinational culture together to think about how can we good to integrate in the futures here. It's very difficult, tough for the management team, but we still think that is the only way we can to give us very good integration with the globalization. I'm still to persuade and encourage a lot of Chinese company to do more, a lot of things integrate the globalization. I still think when we want to develop the China market and provide more premier innovative products, all the resources out of China is very useful for the futures. So first one strategy is globalization. Second one, we use digitalization. It's very simple for thinking about the digitalization. I think first there is how can you use the data to help you set up very sustainable management system in your companies. So we're working with SAP, working with IBM to make sure to set up very sustainable system in our company to make sure in the future you have very strong system supporting to you for your sustainable development. We're still working with IBM in the innovating projects and how can we collect the food safety data very, very automatically from the upstream and to the downstream. That is a very innovative project, and we both of them committed to invest a lot of resources to help us set up system. Another digitalization, I think everybody thinking about today's internet, mobile, social community develop very quickly, especially in China. I think much more quick than out of China. So we still need to think about in the future, when you do the innovation, you need, we say in our vision, okay, we say we need the consumer focus. Consumer focus, that means you really know your consumer. So today the technology, even mobile internet technology, help us to know more about your consumer. Previously, we are a traditional dairy company. We just sell products to our retail distributor and to our retail. We actually don't know which consumer buy our products. But today the internet technology help us to know where your consumer, because they have a lot of activity connect you through the social media, through the internet, through e-commerce. So we already know we need to set up our actually consumer big data in the futures. So through their behavior, you know their really consumer needs, they really what kind of products you need to provide to them. And also in the future, especially the new generation, they really want the tailor-made products for them. So in these 2 years, actually Mengniu developed a lot of digitalized products. Even the white milks, the same white milks, when you package it in the different package, use a different digital language to communicate with the consumer. That means you can provide more premium value to the consumer. And even we also use the digital technology to give more transparency to our products. You can scan your QR score, and you can immediately what products you from. So in the future, I think that we will use such kind of digitalization, make Mengniu, we have more and more actual our consumer, and also we can get more connected with the consumer. We are not only, okay, we have products, we want to sell to you, and we want to get more sales. We really need to know what's the consumer needs, what you want, what's your actual products we can provide you. And also, future we will involve a lot of consumers to involve together to us to do the innovations. So that, I think that is a new area, give us a lot of challenge, but also give us a lot of opportunity. I know today we have a lot of Chinese industry friends come together to attend such a forum. We still think China have very good opportunity in the future. The per capita consumption for China is still 33 kilometers. We've just focused in 2020 should be close to 36 kilometers. Although only 3 kilometers gaps between now and in the 2020, but for China, big population that have a very big opportunity in the futures. So we think in the future, for Mengniu, we have a vision for 2020. We want to be a globalization company, but with most Chinese dynamics. So we think in the future, China still have a very opportunity for us. But with the Chinese company, we are not only the quantity, but want to be the quality. The quality which is we focus on how can provide the consumer in the nutrition and health. And that is our vision. And I think we can to achieve such kind of target through with our global partner and through our very digitalized technology. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks.
My name is Dennis Johnson. I work with Tetra Pak. I've been with the company for 33 years and in my present position for the last 10. So how is dairy contributing to nutrition security is one of the key questions today. And you know, from my perspective, I believe that dairy is contributing greatly. And you know, I like to start by actually reminding all of you some of the harsh realities that we face in the world today. I think that today was mentioned that 870 million people actually go to bed undernourished every evening. I think that is very important. And if you actually put that in context of 1/3 of all the world's food actually being wasted at the same time, you see that we have a lot to work on this. You know, dairy, I believe, is contributing greatly by working on both perspectives. One is obviously, you know, securing that more people can actually access milk as a nutrition. Why is that important? Because milk is rich in proteins, rich in vitamins, rich in minerals, as has been mentioned by several speakers this morning. But at the same time, I think, you know, dairy is also contributing in securing that milk is not only available, but also is affordable and it's safe. I think it's equally important. The availability as such is not sufficient. And I think, you know, the dairy industry has been working very hard. And if you look at the statistics, and if you look especially at how consumption has developed in the developing world when it comes to milk consumption during the last 20 years, you can see that great efforts are paying off. We can see that especially when it comes to, if you look at Asia, Latin America, Africa, you can see that consumption has actually increased greatly. And especially if we look at the last 15 years in Asia, you can see that, you know, it's really consumption has actually multiplied several times during this time. So that is, you know, obviously contributing greatly to secure nutrition to the masses when it comes to consumption. At the same time, I think, you know, the dairy industry has been working hard on securing as well that we don't forget the waste part of the food. And that the best way we can actually support to reduce waste in this case is to secure that we help the smaller farmers. If you look at a large quantity of today's dairy farmers actually are small farmers. And they can easily be marginalized if we, as an industry, don't help them. And here, you know, Tetra Pak has been working very much together with our customers in order to secure that they become relevant by supporting them in setting up groups. We call them dairy hubs, and then securing that the productivity goes up, that quality is at the right standards, and that they can meet actually the demands that the dairy industry sets on them. And then securing that we link them together with customers so that they also have someone that buys their milk. And this has proven, you know, tremendously successful in several countries where we actually have set up these type of dairy hubs. Bangladesh is one example, Vietnam is another one, and we see this actually as a formula of success to follow in other parts of the world. But from that point of view, I think, you know, dairy is coming together and is seeing those opportunities as well. At the same time, you know, what I think is important is to understand what more can be done, because I think, you know, yes, I mean, everything is relative. I think that the industry has done a good job, and we should be proud about it. But can more be done? Absolutely. And I think, you know, following up a little bit on the previous speaker, I think that, you know, one thing that we shouldn't forget is that dairy today is competing with many other products. And I think that the worst that the dairy industry can do is being complacent about just relying on the nutritional value of milk, because that will not be sufficient in global competition. I think dairy is and will be increasingly more and more competing with other type of products, and other type of products that are spending a lot in product innovation and spending a lot in marketing. And I think that that is one of the challenges going forward, where dairy will have to understand that this will have to be done also by the dairy industry. We see product innovation essential for becoming, staying, and continuing to be relevant to consumers, and especially to young consumers, as it's been mentioned as well. You know, otherwise, independently how healthy milk may be perceived, you know, it might not stay relevant in people's minds, and that is, you know, is something that we all have to understand. So that is, you know, one very important subject. The other one is obviously the subject of communication. I think that communicating with today's consumers is different. You know, it's a lot. I think in the past, a lot of communication was relying on mothers, and I think, you know, going forward, I think that communicating just with the mothers, as far as we can see and as far as we've researched, you know, will not be enough. You know, you have to communicate with all the different consumers, and this includes obviously millennials and younger generations. And there you have to actually understand how to best communicate with them. And I think, you know, what we're seeing is that those companies able to understand that and communicate well with them are actually having an edge, and are having an edge today. And, you know, that will be even more important going forward. And last but not least, sustainability, I think, you know, is very important to understand as well, that, you know, sustainability is becoming more and more important for many consumers. More and more, as far as we have been able to detect and see in our research, is that more and more people are really weighing that in as part of their decision when it comes to buying products. So understanding and then obviously fitting, you know, is your goals and objectives with sustainability goals, I think is going to be increasingly important. And I think, you know, as a dairy industry, I think it's great to see that we are more and more aligned when it comes to securing that there is one message, because that helps tremendously as well the consumers by them listening, seeing, and hearing one aligned message when it comes to dairy and dairy products. So that is really, you know, is my message to start off the discussion today. Thank
you. Actually, while I agree 90% of what Dennis said, I would disagree in the accessibility of milk products and byproducts to the whole community, because many poors are not able to access easily to this precious and important product. With this, let me briefly introduce my organization, FAO, that as intergovernmental institution and organization, we deal with member states, and as a knowledge institution, we do provide skill and developmental-oriented capacity development to our member states. FAO is present in more than 100 countries, physically opening office, but in most of the countries with consultants, those who are not covered by FAO offices. So we can recognize that good nutrition and healthy, productive population are increasingly organized and important prerequisite for the poverty reduction and food security. So having these healthy products means to have a good future. Children going to school, consuming healthy food is to have a secure and reliable generation for the coming period of time. To improve child nutrition, FAO is supporting many developing countries. Just to mention some, we have some projects in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Haiti. According to the studies so far done, the dairy product or dairy sector is creating at least 2 employments per 100 liters of milk produced. I'm aware that IDF has the same strategy in India, which is equivalent to this study. And that shows that dairy sector is even beyond nutrition, as employment, as pro-woman, gender sensitive, and etc. This is all in line with the SDG. We are just abandoning now MDG and shifting to SDG. What are the key issues of SDG? One is what we are talking, sustainability issue. Sustainability in terms of production and productivity, sustainability in terms of partnership, sustainability in terms of addressing all cross-cutting activities. Agriculture was not well addressed. Today, SDG is addressing properly. And for information, from the 17 SDG goals, FAO shares most of them, almost 14 and above. I was going point by point and looking for how about IDF. Practically, IDF shares 12 to 13 of these 17 goals directly, but indirectly, they are addressing the whole 17 SDGs. How? Probably I may go point by point later on. But for sure, IDF and other relevant institutions coming together to discuss common issues under the principles of multi-stakeholder platform is not only important but mandatory today. Unless we bring our heads together, no individual institution can do the job alone. So, in silo, will not go wrong. Her Excellency, the ambassador, was just mentioning the proverb from Africa. So this is the reality. Let's go together and let's act together. FAO hosts the joint FAO-WHO governing, the standard setting body Codex Alimentarius. I know there are different institutions like ISO, AOIC, International, and others, which are dealing with the standard setting system. So, production and productivity alone cannot really do the job. It should be supported by legal frameworks. And those are the obligations of member states, members of associations, and the likes. So that to go, not only for production, but for quality. By not doing that, then we are going to blame this poor cow that in most of the cases, some medias can radiculate based on hypothetical issues. So this shouldn't be tackled being aggressive or proactive, but bringing on the table, those people who are misleading the media and then have tete-a-tete kind of discussion. For sure, in our forthcoming meeting or in Netherlands, I think there will be such kind of interaction that not only pro-sector, but those who are negatively informed of the sector can come and then discuss together. This is something that we expect to discuss something science-based, evidence-based activities instead of obliging our poor communities to go differently. Briefly, what IDF is doing in terms of milk and milk product related activities or products is very advantageous in terms of health and nutrition security. I'm not going to preach you that milk fights childhood undernourishment, micronutrients, undernutrition, and the double burden of the undernutrition. Milk dairy products help linear growth in undernourished or socioeconomically disfavored poor community. It increases adult height, bone health, maintains oral health, and in terms of treatment, as you know, yaourt has probiotics, goat and sheep goat as a medicinal impact for children, sick people, and elders. And of course, hard cheese and milk decreases risk of dental caries. Those are very few among the advantages. So, balancing and variety are the key issues rather than, blindly criticizing the sector for provoking some unpleasant histories. From the economic benefit, I mentioned earlier that the sector is very important for youth employment, women, and the society at large. It provides immediate and multiple benefits of household level of farm families, often for women, as I mentioned, this responding to the SDG number 5 and 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals. As I said earlier, most of the poor urban and rural families have limited access to the livestock products, including milk, because of its cost. But this can be solved by bringing the two different dimensions, the industrial ones and the subsistence way of production, so that to somehow create a synergy. As you know, 60 to 70% of the production is coming from smallholders, be it in the sector or out of the sector in the crop production as well. But quality is compromising. So the only solution is how best we can bring these two together so that changing this subsistence way of production to a bit modern way of production or market-oriented. By doing so, the GLAB will benefit. The nutrition of women and children, which are most vulnerable of the society, can be targeted directly through dairying by supporting poor families produce and consume at home. Let me give you one example of Rwanda. The Rwandans have the so-called 1 cow per poor family house. And this is going directly, this 1 liter, 2 liter, or 3 liters of milk, after satisfying the family, going to the industry. And this is being packed in 200 milliliter of pack, directly going to school to feed children, so that 1 pack of milk per day per child. What does this mean? This is just assuring the health of this future generation. So dairy is acting in education, in health, addressing the SDG 1, 4, 12, and 13. So practically, IDF is dealing with all the SDGs. What are our challenges today? Challenge number one, the feed and feed-related activities. Whatever we do in the developing countries, above all, the big constraint is the feed issue. No feed, no milk. Even in the industrialized countries, 70% of the cost of the sector is going to feed. So unless we look for holistic approach of how best we can solve the feed and feeding technology or innovative technology by addressing the environmental impact, we cannot go far. Number two, the greenhouse gas emission issue, which is creating a problem with our different people. We don't deny that this sector creates or produces greenhouse emission. But at the same time, the solution is within our sector. By addressing the priorities which were being mentioned, the rehabilitation of green grassland areas to sequestrate the carbon dioxide and then dumping down to the earth, by recycling, and then by using innovative technologies. This is in the environment. And then the other pillar will be the social equity. Unless we address the social equity, we cannot go far away. And the third one is, of course, partnership is one, but also the One Health issue. We have to address the health, environmental, human, and animal health. The accessibility is another problem, which is very difficult to poor communities, be it in the urban or rural. And then the inadequate inclusiveness. Unless we include the smallholders to our media, to our discussion, then we'll be surprised. So I think an alteration and sticking to the international organizations' set standards will solve the problem. I thank you.
You're never given a dream without being given the ability to make it come true. Richard Bach, one of my favorite lines. And as I stand here today, I'd like to thank IDF for finally realizing that India matters. We are the world leaders. It makes me very proud. It's a dream I've had, the recognition in my own forum. Thank you. The topic, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to take, be as brief as possible, is how daring can actually affect nutritional security and what we are doing. You've heard the earlier speakers. I am basically going to tell you that now that we are the global leader, recognized as such, we must have done something right. And so the India growth story is what I'm going to share with you very briefly and state basically what the AM said this morning, the agriculture minister in the inaugural session, that maybe we need to learn from each other. I don't know, maybe what we did was right and maybe somebody may want to pick from what we did. Our basic focus, ladies and gentlemen, was the farmer, continues to be the farmer. And we're farmer-centric as far as dairy industry in the country goes, as far as the dairy sector in the country goes. Our policies revolve around the farmer. Dairying is not merely nutrition. It is nutrition to us. Dairying is not merely commerce. It is commerce to us. Dairying is not merely a very active contributor to the GDP. In fact, it's 25% contributor to the agricultural GDP of the country, risen from 13% about 30 years ago. All of that, dairying is livelihoods. Dairying is adding income to 70 million rural households of India who are in the dairying sector, 70% of which are women, because every paisa that goes back to them, a paisa is like a cent for you, goes back to them, adds to the nutritional security of that particular household. In fact, I'd like to share with you of the entire pie of, let's say, 100 liters of milk, 52 liters of milk is actually used in-house, is used within the village for the nutritional security of the village. Only 48% is marketed. The three major pillars that I'm going to talk about today are actually, if I look back at the SDG goals, at the Group 20 FSN framework, they're not only in alignment, they actually speak the same language. Because what we're looking at here is sustainable dairy development, sustainable socially, economically, in terms of climate, in terms of commerce, in terms of ensuring nutrition. When these 70 million rural households come together in a cooperative structure, which encompasses 22 federal states, some of them larger than, most of them larger than Lithuania or any other country here, then we procure close to about 39 million liters of milk a day through this structure. So our policy started with putting together institutions, structures for procurement. We spent a lot of money on building up the cold chain right from the farmer to the consumer's dining table. We spent a lot of money on pasteurization, processing, and other plants which actually deal with milk products which are actually more innovative. They're acceptable across the country. We also spent a lot of money on breeding, on genetics, on ensuring productivity of the animals goes up. Of late, our policy is moving towards two areas. One is, again, a sustainable goal. That is ensuring biodiversity, conservation of our own indigenous breeds of cattle and buffaloes. The other, of course, is that we're looking at ensuring that nutrition, which is the animal nutrition, does not in any way impact the availability of food across the country. So what I'm trying to say is that by and large, what we use is crop residues, which is efficient usage of energy. It is not eating into the resources of the human beings, both in terms of water and land, especially with declining land. And then through a ration balancing program, what we try and ensure is that the crop residues combined with oil cakes and other agri-waste is utilized. So the waste doesn't go waste. That's the other plus point. When I talk about where we are today, I think I'd like to take you back to 1950, when we were producing close to just 17 million liters of milk annually, which is now 141 million liters last year. We, per capita, because our population has grown about 386% in the last 50 odd years, 60 odd years, the per capita availability of milk should have actually gone down. However, the per capita availability of milk in 1950-51 was about 121, way below the world average. We are now above the world average at 317 grams per day per person, which is, because we're a vegetarian, by and large a vegetarian nation, it's almost the same as what has been, what is called the RDA, the recommended dairy requirement of people of the country. Now, how this works? It works because, on the one hand, it's like a cyclical play out of the advantages of dairying. Cyclical because on the one hand, it's adding income in the hand of the farmer family. So they're able to sustain, A, whatever milk they can is utilized and you have nutritional security there. B, the additional income goes towards being able to sustain their livelihoods. On the other hand, it becomes affordable to the consumer because the cooperative structure retains very little for itself. Mandatorily, the cooperative is owned by the farmers. So whatever is sold to the consumer goes back to the farmer, keeping a little bit for R&D and some marketing and other costs that are involved. As a result, what happens to the farmer's income is that dairy for the farmer is besides income, besides nutrition, it also is a safety network during vagaries of nature, during drought, during floods, during earthquakes. And so we're able to help them even. The one point I'm making here is that we do not believe in subsidies. We do not believe in financing poorer people. We do not believe in having an MSP, a minimum support price. We are facilitating the dairy industry, just ensuring that the farmer's focus is not left out. Having said that, I'm going to end, and I'm open to questions towards the end. But before I end, I'm going to quote from Wordsworth. Although summer is over, he said, "The cattle are grazing, their heads never raising. There are 40 feeding the one there." And from the Rig Veda, that's the oldest textbook of India, "Adhineyam Savarghatam Mahate Saubhagya." Cows bring us health and prosperity and nurture us. So we must take care of them. Namaskar.
I think what we've heard today is the opportunity, the huge opportunity about nutrition and health of the world's population, the huge opportunity about the social dimension. And I love the comment from Gerda Verberg at the start there about how if we were truly inclusive, if we truly had global frameworks, then it might only take us a generation to solve this problem. They're not easy to get. To be truly inclusive, to be multi-stakeholder is very challenging. And to have frameworks that work on a global basis is not easy either. However, the prize is worth the effort. And so I'm delighted to hear that we've got intergovernmental organizations driving that. And we had a similar theme from the other speakers. And really at a time when we're struggling to cope with the current issues relating to the volatility in supply and demand and associated issues over profitability, it is important that we focus on this long-term issue of nutrition security because it really is one of the most pressing in the world. I just want to make this point from my own perspective. Although in theory, I know it's a very interconnected world, so it's not quite as simple. Over the coming decades and certainly centuries, because we can look at innovation in that sense. For mankind will create new and innovative ways of overcoming many of the challenges we face today for almost every human activity, be that energy creation and distribution, transport, construction, housing, communications, education, you name it. One thing's going to be a constant, and that is the essential micro and macronutrients we're going to require for health. Human evolution simply doesn't work that quickly, and we're going to require the same nutrients in 1,000 years we require today. It's as simple as that. And with this in mind, nutritional security should not and cannot afford to be subordinate to other agendas and policies. And we can't compromise our policies relating to nutritional security. Otherwise, there will be a huge consequence for the planet. And this is why I think the Sustainable Development Goals are so important. And they really need to gain traction at a global level. And I think, as you were alluding, we've got to drive that down into action. And for that sustainable future, to encompass nutritional security, that nutritional security is going to have to be on a global basis, not just on a regional or national basis. Otherwise, it's not going to be a peaceful future. It's not going to be a secure future. And if we think we've got problems with migration and human movement at the moment, we'll have much bigger problems in the future. I think Ms. Sun also talked about a very, very important part of sustainability in this particular debate, and that is we've got to think about consumer behavior. We've got to think about what consumers actually want, because their purchase decisions are somewhat made on the basis of nutrition, but quite frankly, there's a lot of other drivers. They do require diversity. They do require innovation. They require us to adapt to their needs. The millennials, we heard a bit about their requirements. They're very different. They don't think the same. The digital world we're in. Connecting digitally within companies and from companies is going to be critical. And that's actually going to be critical to nutritional security. It's not just about commerce. And choice is different. Choice is different around the world. It's different for the affluent. It's different for the poor. We need to be accommodating both when we're thinking about this debate. Because ultimately, it's when the two come together and that we're able to solve on a global basis, taking all into account, that we're going to be able to rise to these challenges. Mr. Johansson basically showed that, or talked about the fact that it needed to be our nutrition needed to be available, affordable, and safe. Absolutely. And Mr. Tukola challenged him on the availability, which I think was a good challenge. Or the affordability, even if it's available. I think we've got a challenge with both, quite frankly. We've got tremendous improvements in production we've seen over the last few decades, that's for sure. But we're still wasting a third of our food. That's a disgrace in a world where people are starving. We've got to be doing something about that. He talked about the dairy hubs and the opportunities there, and I'll come back to that when we start talking about our last two panelists. Dennis challenged us about there's a lot more that we need to do, and we are competing. This is not just a dairy discussion. It's a much broader discussion than that. And if we do not provide our consumers with what they want, and this comes back to some of the things Ms. Sun was saying, we need to stay relevant. Otherwise, we're not going to provide the nutrition that the population needs. And I'll allude to the comments I was making earlier in the day. Dairy nutrition is essential if we're going to solve this nutritional security debate. Not many people really know that, and certainly not a lot of consumers. And they are getting bombarded with a lot of contradictory messages. We're going to have to cut through. And not just for the commercial health of the dairy chain, for their health. We've got to be relevant to them, though. Communication's needed. And again, we need to get sophisticated at our communication. I was delighted to see Mr. Tukola talk about the fact that he can clearly see direct alignment between 12 of the Sustainable Development Goals and what we're doing in IDF. I don't think this is by accident. I think we've been working towards this for so many years. I think our time has come. The requirement to look at things from a more sophisticated perspective, from a more holistic perspective, to bring nutrition, sustainability, food safety together is our opportunity. It's our opportunity to make a much broader contribution because we are part of the solution to these goals. And that is starting to become understood, at least by some of the key influencers, including some of the intergovernmental organizations. But I will recycle to that comment. Unless we can connect with consumers, it's not going to work. It's got to go from global to local, ultimately to consumer decision making. We've got some challenges. But let's not complicate it by having lots of disjointed frameworks, etc. Again, this is right in IDF's sweet spot as we help pull together these sorts of things. Let's make sure that as a sector we know what we want. You also, Dr. Tukola, highlighted the need for frameworks, the need for the Codex, the ISO, the AOACs. Those frameworks are going to be critical, but I think we're going to need broader frameworks. We don't have the Codex of Sustainability yet. It's all over the place. We've got to help and take a leadership role. The next session's going to be one where we'll highlight the leadership role we believe we are playing with the comprehensive framework we've developed for dairy. You also talked about the need for the synergy between industrial and subsistence farming as we move forwards. I totally believe and support in that statement. If we're going to progress to this sustainable nutritional future, it will not be just from our mature dairy chains. We need to increase the performance of smallholders. There are a staggering between 600 and 800 million of them. I think there were various speakers referenced that. And the way I look at that is, we talk about the amount of milk we'll need in the future as this huge challenge, and yes, it is. But the efficiency of many of the smallholders is terrible. Think about if we can improve the quality of that 1 litre of milk, what difference that would make. Think about if we could take that 1 litre of milk to 2 litres of milk, what difference that would make. This is a real opportunity and would have massive impact. And in that respect, India really does matter and has mattered for a long, long time in IDF. But I think the agenda now that we're following, our strategy, our vision, it's becoming clearer to India and to the rest of the IDF community why that is the case. And I think that we will be looking to India to help us as we go on our journey towards providing what we can towards sustainable nutrition and learning from some of the lessons that you've learned for a long time now from the work you've been doing, which quite frankly, I was in India in Calcutta earlier this year. The performance has been staggering over the years, and to move to a situation where everybody in India, taking into account the accessibility issue, affordability issue we talked about, but everybody in India could actually have access to 1 serve of dairy a day. What a magnificent performance given the size of that population. The other important aspect of I think what you talked to us about was the need for this to be developed using market signals. And again, back to Dr. Tukola's point, this isn't necessarily the same approach to market signals that we might have with a scale farming approach. But fundamentally, it's market driven. And again, my personal view is that ultimately that's the most sustainable way of doing things from a business perspective and the nutrition we can provide long term. So I think our time has come, and our time has come to make a difference. And I'm really looking forward to the IDF rising to that challenge. And by that, it's the people I'm looking at in the audience that will help us get there. So thank you very much for your attention.